Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Jens Davidson here. So welcome back. I know it's been a while since I've posted any videos. Mainly the reason for that is because my schedule has been incredibly tight, just with stuff around the farm and this time of year being late summer, demonstrating blacksmithing at festivals almost every weekend. So the other reason is my desktop computer over there that I always used for editing my videos is down for the count for the last couple months. Back in June, we had a power outage, even though it was a perfectly clear sunny day. In the afternoon, I was in my garage not using electricity, changing oil in the car, and all of a sudden, I didn't notice it until I came inside and saw my clocks blinking. But we lost power for what my neighbors tell me was only like a minute, if that. And my desktop computer was on and uploading a video to YouTube, which was already done at that point, so I didn't lose it. But losing the power for just a few seconds messed something up in the hard drive. So it just says it gets to the BIOS screen and then gives me an error message saying NTLDR is missing, something like that. So I don't know when I'm going to get around to getting that resolved, hopefully with the help of the IT department at work. But anyhow, I digress. A couple of you have posted comments on my videos, which I always appreciate comments. It's always great to hear you guys' thoughts and any questions that you might have. And these particular comments revolved around a couple of skillets that I've done restoration / experimentation on, and they kind of wanted to see an update on how they look like today. So here's the two skillets in question. Both are lodges. So this is the newer of the two. This is the one that I restored back in February of 2023, same year as now. This was the most nasty, disgusting, sorry looking skillet I've ever seen in my life. You guys can go back on my channel to see the rather thorough restoration process that I did on that, where I detailed day by day how this thing clarified, with all the seasoning and gunk and creosote on there, on a daily basis, having been soaked in sodium hydroxide solution. So clean as a whistle. You guys already saw that, but someone was wanting to see how this thing has turned out since. You can see some lines on there. That's from using this on my barbecue grill outside. I believe so the only thing I've cooked in this is steak once or twice, and then chicken several times, and eggs. So the former two, steak and chicken, that involves a lot of heat, and that's really good for developing a seasoning layer because you're cooking for a decent bit of time. Eggs are generally really quick and lower heat, so it doesn't really help that much for seasoning. But in any case, you can see that throughout those months, so it's been 6 months now. This thing will focus, thank you. Yeah, the skillet looks beautiful. You can see there's a slight brownish hue to it in the right light, kind of from those polymerized oils. But you'll notice that this doesn't look the same as past skillets that I've done seasoning on, and that's because the finish prior to developing that seasoning on it. This was heated up in my blacksmith forge to ballpark 1600 degrees Fahrenheit based on the color, the black body radiation color. And at that point, the the cast iron was readily oxidized, and it developed, this kind of dull gray oxide layer on the surface. It wasn't impermeable, it still had some surface rust issues, which I later cleaned up in my kitchen sink with steel wool and dish soap, just to make sure there was no residue from the coal and whatnot, leftover ashes, so on and so forth. And then from there, I did not do any intentional seasoning on this skillet whatsoever. I just used it. I wiped it down with oil to make sure it wouldn't rust in the interim between using it. I don't use my skillets every day. But other than that, I didn't do any intentional seasoning. I just cooked on it. So you can see how it turned out. The finish here is obviously very similar to skillets that you've seen on my channel in the past, and that's the ones that I cleaned up using the oven clean cycle method. So as I mentioned on my channel in past videos, there's a lot of different ways of cleaning cast iron skillets. There's the sort of mechanical abrasive method, which is what I used on this one, which was like an angle grinder and orbital sander and whatnot. And for doing antique restorations, for me personally, I don't buy skillets that have a high value. I buy skillets to use them, not to collect them and later sell them or whatever. So I don't care about mechanically cleaning a skillet. I've ranted on that in the past. But the oven clean cycle method of cleaning cast iron skillets is good if you have several that you want to clean at the same time. If you do it for just one single piece of cast iron, there's a good chance you're going to crack it or warp it because it's going to ramp up temperature way too quickly for the cast iron, and it's going to cool down way too quickly. When you've got more stuff in there, more cast iron, it kind of tempers the rate at which the temperature of the oven increases and decreases. And a slow temperature change, whether positive or negative, is the safest way to handle cast iron. Steel doesn't really care as much, but cast iron is definitely sensitive because it is brittle. It cannot warp, not like steel can. It'll warp, but not nearly to the extent. It's more likely to crack. So, that said, I got other skillets. Over here, this is a Wagner No. 8. This was the oven clean cycle skillet. So it's actually darn near a carbon copy of the Lodge. A little bit lighter hue, it looks more like a light brown than the black, but yeah, this thing wasn't heated up to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. But still, a drop-dead gorgeous skillet, absolutely beautiful skillet. And dimensionally, pretty much identical to the Lodge. The Lodge is actually a tiny bit lighter in weight, but only by a couple ounces. Anyhow, so yeah, this was the oven clean cycle. Left that gray, dull gray finish, which I think is absolutely beautiful. I love it. And you can see that there is a slight brownish tinge to the polymerized oils of the seasoning layer that's developing on this. And this one, just like the other two skillets here, I have not done any intentional seasoning on. I just keep it with a little bit of oil on there so it doesn't rust, and I use it. So this was the other main event of this video, and that was where a viewer wanted to have a follow-up on this skillet. So this is the one that I sanded down. I took it into my garage. It was a Lodge griddle that I bought brand new from Walmart when I was in graduate school back in 2013. She's 10 years ago now. And I don't like Lodge's finish on skillets. They leave a rough sand cast finish, and they've been doing that since, to my knowledge, the early 90s or late 80s, when they turned away from the process of pre-seasoning skillets and they developed the automatic method of seasoning them. If they left the skillets smooth, if they used a fine grade of sand for casting the skillets, and they didn't do any sort of mechanical abrasion on them to smooth them out, and they used their method of pre-seasoning skillets, which involves having them all hanging up in a long array and being sprayed uniformly by spray nozzles that are blowing on some mixture of cooking oils for polymerization, for seasoning, and then running them on this sort of assembly line into a furnace. You can see it on their YouTube channel. If the skillet's smooth, that sprayed on oil, because they're hanging vertically, it's just going to drip and run, and you're going to have a pretty nasty mess of drips and gooey, nasty, not fully polymerized and hardened oils on the skillet. So that's just not acceptable. So Lodge determined that the only way to remedy that problem is to leave the skillets rough, and that rough texture in turn provides more adhesion for that oil so that it doesn't drip and run down the skillet nearly as badly as it would if it was smooth. So Lodge just simply weighed the the benefits and hazards of doing that, and it's a matter of personal taste. Some people don't like it, myself included, so I fix it. Every time I would wipe this thing down after using it, it would absolutely shred a paper towel, and I would have little bits and bobs of paper towel that I'd have to pick out of here. When I'd cook pancakes on there, I would have little burnt crispies of pancakes that were like burned into the rough texture that you couldn't really get out without scrubbing it. So yeah, I don't like that. So I sanded it smooth, and as you can see, it turned out pretty well. So the goal of that video where I did this was to kind of experiment on whether or not you need to pre-season a skillet, or if you can have good non-stick performance without pre-seasoning and just by using it. And so yeah, all 3 skillets on here have not had any intentional seasoning. The only seasoning that's on here is on here because I've used them. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, this skillet has pretty much been the main skillet that I've used since I did that video back in February. And the primary reason for that is not because I don't love my other skillets like that Wagner over there, but I wanted to kind of prove it out and try different methods, you know, different cooking recipes, etc. in there to make sure that I'm getting a good enough heat from the skillet. And the only reason I would not have good heat is because the bottom of it is warped. And so I had to braise on those 3 dots to effectively give myself a tripod. That tripod effectively means that there is an air gap between the glass top of my stove and the bottom of the skillet. And more so, where it's warped, that's closer to the glass than where it isn't warped. You know, so there is a difference. It gets considerably hotter in the middle where it's warped than the rest of it. But in practice, I really haven't noticed any difference. It performs absolutely beautifully. Steaks, chicken breasts, eggs, everything. So I have no complaints about this thing. So yeah, I'll stop ranting. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And I really hope you enjoy the content in general. And again, I apologize that I'm not more regular in putting out videos. I've just got a lot going on, and I have a computer now that doesn't want to let me edit videos. So I also started a new YouTube channel a few months back called Timber and Anvil, and that channel focuses more so on the blacksmithing and woodworking side of my hobbies and talents, if you will. And that was actually recommended by a pretty significant YouTuber who I know personally, Roy Adams at Christ Centered Ironworks blacksmith channel. So he recommended that I break out and kind of just leave one channel, you know, my Jens Davidson channel, focused on kind of cooking and cast iron skillets and stuff like that, and break out a separate channel focused on blacksmithing and metalworking and woodworking hobbies, just to kind of have more of a focus. So, because I know my Jens Davidson channel was everything under the sun. So anyhow, really appreciate you guys engaging the channel and leaving comments and, you know, saying either congrats, worked great, love the video, or asking questions, you know, or critiques, saying, you know, that sucked, what'd you do that for, you know, you should do this differently, you know, constructive, corrective criticism is always appreciated. I'm not too arrogant to take somebody's advice if I think it's good sound advice and they come from a point of experience. So yeah, your comments are always appreciated. I really like the channel engagement because it kind of tells me that people are actually watching this. So it kind of justifies my time. So anyhow, I'll leave it there. And yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate it if you guys hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. And yeah, keep an eye out for future videos. Can't promise a regular interval, but I'll do what I can. So take care, everybody.